Welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. I am Gavin Williams alongside
Charlie Caleri
and
CJ Moore.
And apologies really quick. It was a nice St. Patty's weekend. Voice is a little shot. Got a huge Bonnie's game tonight, NIT.
NIT first round tonight. It's big. A lot of big things. I mean, like you said, St. Patrick's Day weekend, NIT tonight. CJ back in studio for the second time. And let me just say this. I mean, we've had our team correspondents. We've had our Colts correspondent, Ian Kennedy, our Giants correspondent, Tommy Marino. But I think CJ might be our first sports correspondent with college basketball correspondent. So thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here again, man. We're going to be talking about today March Madness, a little tournament that's coming up soon. And we'll discuss some of the potential upsets, some Cinderella teams, and just some intriguing matchups that we think are interesting coming up here Thursday and Friday. So if you haven't made a bracket, make two.
Make one.
Make
two. I got
Make
5
three.
right now.
Yeah, I've only made about 2 or 3, but I mean tonight and I think tomorrow especially, I'm gonna be grinding away, picking at these matchups and really diving deep.
Every Monday morning after Selection Sunday, I just get that buzz, man. It's like I'm on a cloud 9. I'm on a high, and I just make like 3, and then like the next 2 days I'll make 1 and 1.
It is hard to make a lot back to back.
Well, I mean,
then you're looking
it
at
is.
the same
It
matchups.
is.
You're like, oh, I picked McNeese this time, so I'll pick Clemson this time, or last time, so I'll pick Clemson.
You get yourself in the head.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, then always, I mean, this is how I've done it every single year since I've actually been alive. You always got to make one bias bracket. Well, I haven't done it when I was a 2-year-old, but whatever. You always got to make one bias bracket, man. Like, I know you got a Michigan bracket
I do
out
it.
there.
Actually, I made 2 of them. I have 1 Duke winning, and I have 1 Michigan winning.
And I got my Michigan State bracket out there.
It's fair.
Sadly, Q's couldn't be in it
Everybody's
this
got
year.
one. I mean, I had some with UB winning when they were in the tournament back in the day. So I mean, anything's possible.
I had a
But-
Bonnie's one back when they were in it.
Yeah, I had a Bonnie's one too.
Me and Durr made it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Andrew Durr, my guy. He's my man. He's my guy. He'll understand that one. But yeah, let's get right into it. Why not?
Well, I want to talk about something first. CJ, you brought up something quick before we came on. Press record real quick. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, basically I said that I filled out a paper bracket earlier because I feel like it brings back a sense of nostalgia. This new electronic bracket, it's not the same as writing down different names on a sheet of paper and having to cross out the names after a team loses.
You highlight it too.
And also, I think it's a good way to have like a master bracket instead of having to check like your apps or anything. You could just go right to that piece of paper and see which team you have winning.
You
Old
can have
trusty,
that,
man.
You can have that piece of paper right in front of your face as you got the TV right there. You're just hoping for the matchups. You're hoping for the right teams to win. There's nothing better than paper bracket. I always fill at least one out every year. I still got to do it. I save it till Thursday, though, but right before noon, I save it to right then. I got all the first 4s in, so I could circle who made it. Oh, sorry, highlight. I'm a highlighter guy, so get the
I'm
highlight
a letter
going.
guy too.
Oh, when it comes
Yeah.
to brackets, it's only highlights, and then like I hate it, but you have to get pen. You have to cross it out when it's wrong, when it's not perfect per usual. I think this is the year, though.
You think?
I think this may be the year.
All right, yeah. All right.
You never know.
I'm hoping, man. But
How much money do you get if you make like an absolutely perfect bracket? You know,
I actually don't know. Isn't there like a thing
I
for
think
that?
there's like wealthy people who are willing to give a significant amount of money to someone who has the perfect bracket. But I know
well,
ESPN gives a certain amount of money. I think.
yeah, because I know when I submitted my first one, it was like Capital One and like Coors Light or something.
I think it's like a sweepstakes thing or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just like you get a ton of like free stuff. It's kind of like
I'd like some free Coors Light.
I mean, it's
gear.
very smart for these companies because like nobody's gonna get a perfect bracket. It's kind of like the equivalent of like at I saw last week somebody, I don't know what school it was. If you guys know, it was like at halftime they did the thing where you putt the ball across the basketball
I thought it was
court.
Texas Tech.
Was it Texas Tech? And this guy nailed the
When
putt.
Pat Mahomes came out and they.
No, was it that guy?
Was it that? I thought it was.
I think it was that. Yeah. And Pat Mahomes came out and he got free tuition. It's like
Yep.
the same kind of like chances. I mean, it's probably better chance to make a putt in that hole than make a
I think-
perfect
it
bracket.
definitely
but-
is.
Yeah,
Definitely
But
is.
it's kind of the same kind of promotion. It's like that company, whoever was, fulfilling that tuition for that kid probably never expected to actually pay that money. So they probably weren't very happy about that. But kind of the same thing. But let's get into the bracket here. We got some really interesting matchups. And if you guys want to say anything about an upset or Cinderella team or any interesting matchup, just go right ahead. What do you think?
I mean, I brought this back up in the last episode, which CJ was also here for. I'm going to say it again. I like Drake, and I like him a lot. And I know they're an 11 seed. They're going up against Mizzou. I think that's a good matchup for them. I think they match up pretty well. I think that is a possible game that they can move on as an 11 seed. And I saw this stat the other day. I don't know necessarily if it's Drake this year, but they do have this thing where every Sweet 16, they have one at least 10 or lower seed in it. I think the past 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So Drake might be that team to look out for. I really like it. And if they move on, though,
I'm
going
to
to
call you out on that, though. Because I disagree with you on that matchup. I really like Mizzou, and I've really liked them the whole year. Really like Mark Mitchell. Really like Caleb Grill. Both those guys can shoot the lights out, especially Caleb Grill. I mean, if you haven't watched his highlights, just go watch them. They're pretty tough. But I think Mizzou can really make a run in this tournament. Like you said, I like bringing up Texas Tech here because it's the next matchup and the winners will play each other. So I think Mizzou does get past the round of 32 year, and I think Tech does go home in the first weekend. If that's what you're about to allude to, I don't know if you were or not. But.
No, I wasn't going to allude to that, but we'll start. We can kick that off right now. We'll come in and out of it. So your top 1 through 4 seed to be kicked out weekend number 1. You got Texas Tech out of there.
That is not my one that I was going to say, but that is a
possible
seed that I think is going to be gone because I think Mizzou will make it to the Sweet 16. I've been saying that for a lot of the season too.
I like it. And I'll kind of piggyback on that idea, not necessarily stapling in yet. I think Purdue might be out in the first weekend as well. I think if Clemson could play their best ball, like how they did against Duke or against the rest of the ACC, which I know is really low this year. I know there's a lot of questionable things going around, but I think they might have an edge when it comes to Purdue. We'll see, though. I mean, we'll see how Purdue looks in that first round against High Point.
Right.
High Point's first ever tourney run. Good to see a new team in every year.
I was going to just mention real quick before, CJ, if you want to chime in here, that grouping of 4 right there, the Clemson versus McNeese 5 versus 12 and the Purdue 4 seed versus 13 seed High Point. That's probably my favorite 4 grouping in this whole bracket right here.
Yeah, I like that.
I love that little I'll just call it a little
mini bracket,
mini tournament, I guess. Just because I think that any of those teams can get to the Sweet 16. I think it all depends on the matchups though. I think if they play Purdue, I think that they pull that out. But I think if McNeese plays High Point, I don't think they do actually. I think High Point could easily beat Purdue, but I don't think they get easily. I think High Point could beat McNeese or Clemson, but I don't think they get past Purdue. So it's like one of those things. Clemson, I think, could beat all of them. So it's a very just give and take region for me. And every time that I go through the bracket, I think I have a different result and a different combination of result, which is pretty cool. But I just really like that little 4 grouping right there.
Yeah, just to touch on what you're saying a little bit about these seedings, I feel like the gap over the last few years has sort of closed a little bit. Like these teams that are 5 and 12 games and things like that, I feel like they're really better matchups than they have been in previous years. I feel like the seeding doesn't really matter because a lot of this is because of the transfer portal. You got a lot of high major guys playing at these smaller schools. Like you said, in that High Point Purdue game, you got Bobby Pettiford from Kansas playing at High Point, and I don't feel like Purdue is that good of a team either. So I feel like we could see High Point and McNeese. Like I said, at McNeese, you have Quadir Copeland too.
My guy.
A lot of high major guys playing at these smaller schools. And I don't
really
feel
cool
like
to see too.
Yeah, it is. I feel like these guys are getting their shine now at the smaller schools that they didn't get at the bigger schools. And it's not really a Cinderella run for them. It's really just these teams are really just evenly matched out.
I mean, all it takes in March is one guy to get hot, and that can lead your team. I mean, every
Jack
team,
Golke.
DJ Burns. I mean, and the list goes on. I mean, every team has that makes a run that's usually a lower seed has that one guy that everybody remembers, man, on the team. It's just like every year, there's that one team every year, and there's one new face that everybody 2 days from now, I'll know a completely new name that I didn't know.
And they'll have
right
sponsorships. Sponsorships.
They'll have
roll
NIL deals. I
coming.
mean, just from one shining moment, like they say, one shining moment.
Bring a grown man cry, man.
Yeah,
so
but
amazing.
this is the best time of the year, man. It really is. But yeah, I like that you were saying that, CJ, because I was thinking about that too as I'm filling out my bracket. I'm like, I feel like any of these teams, like I'm looking at, and I'll get into my biggest upset right now. I even think some of these 15 seeds the last few years have been better than. I mean, obviously these top 8 teams in the country. I think one of the top 8 teams is going to be out. in the first weekend, and it's going to be your Michigan State
Oh,
Spartans.
come on,
I'm sorry
man.
to say, but Barry Evans and the Bryant Bulldogs
Come on.
are going to pull off the upset, and if it's not them, it's going to be Shaka Smart and Marquette. They're going to be out in the first weekend, and I've been on this train for a while too. I've been on the Mizzou train, and I've been on the Michigan State is kind of frauds train, and I'm going to go for anybody
Wow.
in the Big Ten.
Wow.
I'm going to say anybody in the Big Ten is going to be frauds in this tournament.
Including your Michigan
Including
Wolverines.
Michigan.
Okay.
They're not going to, no team is going to make a deep run. I actually think the deepest team is going to be Maryland. And I think it's just because of the matchups that they have in their bracket. But I think the Big Ten overall is going to be kind of diminished, you'll see, in
Okay.
this tournament, just because I think they beat up on each other so much in the regular season as they do football. Kind of the same, style of play. But I think Michigan State's going to kind of have a Middle Tennessee kind of ending the season again.
Wow. No, that
Something
was
like
painful. No, we don't talk about
I'm
that.
sorry, man, but I think that's just how it's going to be.
I'm going to piggyback off your Big Ten to bring up another idea you just had earlier with your favorite little mini bracket. I like Maryland's mini bracket. I think Maryland playing Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon's usually in there every year. I don't know, but I think Maryland definitely gets past it. But a matchup that I do like is Memphis-Colorado State. I think Colorado State's one of those sleeper teams. They might be a Cinderella just for a round, but I think even if we get like just the higher seeds, if we get Memphis, Maryland, expect a good game out of that. I think that could be a really good game. Obviously, Maryland representing the Big Ten. Well, not representing the Big Ten because they didn't win it, but you know what I'm trying to say there. That's a nice little mini one. But
By the way, why you pointed that out, first of all, Michigan Wolverines did win the Big Ten championship, which is big, but how are they below the team they beat the day before and then not the same seed as the team they beat the day
I
of
don't
the
know.
championship? That's all I'm saying.
I don't know what their quad one win record or their conference record. I didn't pay attention to those two. I paid attention to my team.
I know while we were talking about it the week before, Gav. I mean, we were talking about how Michigan was ranked 20th,
Yep.
right? If they win the Big Ten, we both agreed they should be probably a top 4 seed.
I know.
I think they should
they
be a 4.
They should be a 4.
They're a 5. I mean, it's not that much of a difference, but they might be avoiding UC San Diego if they're a 5 or a 4 seed in this whole thing. So I think that's a pretty big outlier right there. But because I do think UC San Diego is a really good team.
I mean, 30-4 is not the joke yet. I mean,
nothing to sneeze at. Nothing
mean,
to sneeze
nothing.
at. No, but I do like that mini bracket as well because I really do like Memphis this year. I do
too.
think Colorado State's a really good team though. That
I think they
whole
are.
Mountain
Yeah.
West has
they're
been
slept
really
on.
good.
Utah State.
Right. I think Utah State will win.
Boise
their
State
game.
was the first 4 out.
I think they should have been in too. That's something I want to touch on later as well. Yeah, but I like that mini bracket because I do think Maryland. I'm gonna just say it. I think Maryland and St. John's are on a kind of a collision course for the Elite Eight
I have to.
in that bracket.
I was just about to. That was gonna be my next question. I was gonna bring up. Where do you guys think St. John's road ends, or does it go all the way? I mean, I think you guys are both gonna say end, but I just want to see where you guys are feeling it because I know if the potential matchup is Florida in that segment right there.
The
I mean,
West
obviously,
region.
yeah, the West region. So I mean, they have to. There's a lot of good teams in that region, like Maryland and Florida, St. John's, Mizzou, because you like Mizzou a lot there too. There's a lot of good. There's Kansas and Arkansas, which that's another story. But where do you guys see St. John's Road ending, or if they go all the way?
Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a Kansas fan, but like you were saying earlier, Charlie, any team could get hot at any time, and I know it's cliche to say, but it's not a 7-game series. It's just going to be which team is better that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if Kansas gets hot going into the tournament, they could get rid of St. John's. Zeke Mayo, he's been on fire. He's hitting 5 threes in the last 3 games, in each of the last 3 games. And I feel like that Kansas-St. John's matchup is going to be great because you're going to have Zuby Ejiofor against his former school in Kansas against Hunter Dickinson. I feel like that'll be a great matchup in the post. And I feel like St. John's could lose that game, but also you don't know which type of Kansas team you're going to get. You could get a really good team that beat Duke at the beginning of the year, or you could get a team that gave up a 20-point lead to Baylor.
That's very true.
Very true. Yeah, I'm with you there, CJ. I mean, I think St. John's could win the whole thing. I think they could get out first round. I think it's all about how they shoot the ball. Obviously, they're not even top half of the country in shooting percentages and stuff like that, and they're not a great shooting team. That's not their forte. But if a team outshoots them, they can't do anything about it. They're not going to be able to do anything about
That's
it.
very true.
I think Uno, Omaha, they play a really fast game, really fun game. They beat up the trash can after every win. I think that's pretty cool that they got to the tournament. It's kind of teams like that you know that you feel like could go on a run too. A lot of people are on the St. John's train. I feel like that could be one that ends really early too. I feel like St. John's and Michigan State are kind of a similar team this year. But I believe in John's a little bit more. I think they end up playing Maryland in the Elite Eight. I think they get past them, and I think they lose in the Final Four, to answer your question fully.
Okay. All right. I think it's a great story from St. John's. Last year,
I love
Rick
St. John's.
Pitino has least favorite coaching experience ever this year. 2 seed, Big East champs, completely flipped the script. They're a 30-win team. I just don't like seeing the Gators in that same exact region. I think the Gators are going to have a good run. I'm not saying they're going to win the whole thing, but I'm saying I really think they have a really good run. I think their first 2 potential matchups can be a cakewalk for them. I mean, Norfolk State, not slamming them, but I think that should be a win. But you never know because it's happened 2 times now. Or is it 3 times now? It's 3 times now that a 16 seed's won.
Twice. It was FDU and UMBC.
I thought someone else beat. I thought someone beat Purdue one year.
That was FDU.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this could be the 3rd.
Yes. Yes.
But you never know. And then I think UConn and Oklahoma are both winnable games. And then it would leave a Maryland or Memphis potential. And I think they could possibly get behind that too. So, I mean, I just don't see the road going too far. I think it's an Elite Eight run for St. John's this year. I think that's where the road closes.
Yeah, totally fair because I feel like personally for me it comes down to Florida, Maryland, and Johns in that region. But I wanted to ask you guys about a specific team because the last few years they've been really struggling and they've had some really, really questionable losses. And you might be thinking I'm going the Purdue route, but we've already talked about them. I'm talking about Kentucky here.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you guys think that Kentucky's ceiling is? They're in kind of a tough little foursome region right there, and then obviously their whole region's very tough. But where do you think that their ceiling is and their floor is, I guess, for this tournament?
So playing Troy in the first matchup, I feel like they get past Troy no problem. But right now they're out of arguably their best player on the team in Jackson Robinson, and I'm not sure if Lamont Butler is going to be playing either. I feel like Texas wins that game against Xavier in the first 4, and they beat Illinois too. I think
so too.
I feel like Texas is going to get hot, and they could knock off Kentucky as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to bring up the Texas matchup because I really like how Texas, obviously, we'll see in the first 4. If they can get past Xavier, I really like that matchup against Illinois. I think Illinois' beginning of the season was really good, and
That's
then they
what
just
I'm
fell
talking about
off.
with the Big Ten. It's just like I feel like all the teams are like that, where if they get one of these big matchups against a really good school, like I'm just gonna pick the other team by default, and it's just like how my picks have been going. That's why I was on that train about the Big Ten kind of being worse.
Yeah, and so carrying off that, I mean, Illinois, like I said, the beginning of their season was pretty solid, pretty good, and then like it all just kind of fell away second half of the year. So I think Texas, with playing in the SEC, playing in the hardest conference in the whole, I mean, they have 14 teams. That's a record for how many teams from one conference made one tournament. And I really think that Texas has the ability to match up well against Kentucky. But I do think Kentucky might be a Sweet 16 run this year. But because it's a new identity, it's not Coach Cal anymore. It's a whole new identity, whole new version of a Kentucky that we've never seen before. And they both play in the SEC, so they both have a lot of chips on their shoulders throughout the whole year. So I think if Kentucky can just handle their business, I think their ceiling is the Sweet 16, though, because they could be matched up against the Tennessee, which I really like the Volunteers this year as well.
I was going to say, do you think they can beat Tennessee?
I don't. I think with Tennessee showing that great flash in the SEC tournament, making all the way to the finals, I liked their matchups. Obviously, the one Florida got it all. They took it home, but the road that Tennessee's taken, and they've been ups and downs, and they only have 7 wins this year, or 7 losses this year. So I think that Tennessee will be the better team if those two were to face up against each other. But I think Kentucky's ceiling is the Sweet 16 this year.
I agree with that as well. I feel like Kentucky, they don't really have an identity right now without Jackson Robinson, and he was basically playing point guard for them. He was their main scorer, and I know they have a lot of guys like Otega Owe, and he's going to have to put basically the team on his back to carry this team past Tennessee if they want to win. So I feel like that's a very tough matchup for them against Tennessee with Zakai Ziegler. He's going to be all over the ball defensively, getting steals. He's going to be scoring as well. It's going to be a tough matchup for whoever's guarding him. And Tennessee just has too much firepower, too many scores, and their defense is too good for Kentucky.
All right, let's move on to the East region here. couple injuries to be noted throughout
Yeah,
the whole tournament, but the biggest one is Cooper Flagg's injury. His ankle, he hurt it against Georgia Tech in that game over the weekend. And Duke right now, obviously, first game against American Mount St. Mary's, should get that done, even if Cooper Flagg isn't available to go in that game. But next game we get Mississippi State or Baylor. Tough, hard-nosed, defensive-minded teams like they usually are with those coaches. Could we see Duke lose if Cooper Flagg isn't there in the round of 32?
Honestly, I don't think so. I feel like they get past American or Mount St. Mary's or Mississippi State and Baylor. Off of that, though, it would be Sweet 16, I believe, probably between Oregon or Arizona. I feel like both of those teams would be a tough matchup. Personally, I feel like Arizona is going to be there over Oregon, but I feel like Arizona could take out Duke without Cooper Flagg. If Cooper Flagg is back, it's going to be a really good game, and it's going to be a toss-up, honestly.
I was actually just about to mention the same exact thing. I think that Arizona would be their potential matchup in the Sweet 16, and I think eventually if you let Cooper Flagg rest the weekend, right, and he comes back, and you just load him up with painkillers and perks and whatever you got to do to throw him in the game to be like prime A-Rod when his knee, I think that Duke could still get it done, but I think that's a really hard matchup, obviously, with a Caleb Love-led team. Arizona, they showed flashes in the Big 12 tournament that they are going to be someone to really be reckoned with come this weekend, especially if it's an Oregon matchup, which Oregon is pretty decently hot right now too. So that's honestly a matchup that I would love to watch, is Arizona-Oregon. If that's a weekend number one.
Old Pac-12 matchup. I mean, I would be all for that, man.
I mean, Old Pac-12 and weekend number one, that could be one of the best round of 32 games of this whole bracket right here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I do think it's Duke's region to lose.
It really is.
Until the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. If they get out before that, I mean, it's definitely going to be an upset. If obviously looking at the bottom part of this bracket, I love these 8 teams that are in the bottom part of the East bracket, from BYU, VCU, Wisconsin, Montana, St. Mary's, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Robert Morris. You guys have any thoughts about that part of the bracket right there? 'Cause I personally love it.
I think there's only one gap in it. I think Robert Morris is the only gap. I'm not trying to call out. I love my small schools, but I think any other one of those schools could easily put up fights. Obviously, Wisconsin going to the Big 10 championship. Montana, they have an identity with basketball. They make it every year. They always shock teams too.
It's a lot of scoring in this region, I see.
And I see St. Mary's and Vanderbilt. I like St. Mary's, obviously. Vanderbilt, they kept up with everybody in the SEC all year. They had some great quad one wins. Their losses didn't feel like horrible losses. It kind of felt like a 5-point loss. And then obviously Alabama. I mean, Mark Sears, Nelson, you have a lot of guys on that team, and I just think that this is one of the hardest the bottom 8 teams in this bracket. Well, if we're looking at it, it's not bottom, but if we're looking at this bracket with these 8 teams, that's going to be probably the most grueling matches of the tournament just to get to the Sweet 16 and just to get to the Elite 8. That's going to be a really hard region, except for, I mean, Duke has the way to the Elite 8 or Sweet 16, but that bottom, man,
see,
that's
this
tough.
is a situation right here where, like, you could look at this and be like, I wish Wisconsin and Arizona were flipped. If that was the case, this region would be a lot more balanced, I feel like. But I'm not complaining about Arizona potentially being matched up against Oregon, so not complaining.
Yeah, just going back to the bottom of that bracket, what really catches my eye is I think St. Mary's is going to beat Vanderbilt, but what really catches my eye is the St. Mary's versus Alabama game.
Yeah.
They play 2 completely different styles. Alabama's a very fast team, high scoring, and St. Mary's really slows the game down, tries to get the most out of their possessions. So I feel like I like Alabama a lot, but I feel like if it's a very slow game, St. Mary's could potentially win that game against Alabama, because St. Mary's is not going to let Alabama get out and run. It's going to be whoever can get the most out of their possessions, and St. Mary's is not going to put up a lot of points. Alabama's in the 80s, 90s almost every single game. St. Mary's likes to keep the game in the 60s. They like to slow the game down, and they try not to let you get as many extra possessions as you can. So I feel like that's going to be a very interesting matchup.
I think that the most underrated part of March Madness is tempo. If you can have your tempo being played at, or the other team adjusts to playing at your tempo, you're in control of the game.
Yeah.
You're in control of the bracket, whatever you think. But it also comes with star power too. It's a balance of both. You need to have good tempo. You need to have good star power. Those are the teams that really succeed in March. And then you got to have good coaching too. Those are the three pillars, I think, of success in March Madness, for me at least.
Yeah, and speaking about Alabama, especially when it comes to a potential matchup with Duke, I just hope we get the March version of Mark Sears, because if that happens, they might make another Final Four run. And that could be another special run that they have, which if they have the ability to beat Duke, if Cooper Flag's back and healthy or somewhat healthy, nobody's healthy right now. I mean, we're in March, but if Mark Sears could be like how he was last year on that magical run well, not magical, I mean, they were great, but I'm just saying it was magical. And I think if Mark Sears is that version, I think they go to the Final Four, honestly.
Yeah, anytime you get to the Final Four, it's magical.
Yes.
So I'm with you there. But
You hang banners for Final Fours
right,
for a reason.
You do.
You do.
I want to talk about the A10 team in here, VCU. Their matchup against BYU, because, I mean, obviously going to St. Bonaventure, we watch a lot of A10 basketball. And I'll be rooting for VCU in the tournament and in the game because they're in the A10.
They represent us.
Yeah, they represent us in a way. You're right. But I just want to get your thoughts about VCU, and then if you think that they can get past BYU and their ceiling potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a really hard matchup for round one. BYU is one of the hottest teams in college basketball right now, and I just think it's going to be a tough matchup for them, especially coming off a really tough game against George Mason that they had, which I know they get almost a week of rest, maybe like 5 days, 4 days or something like that. But BYU is a really strong team, but if VCU wins this game, I could see them matching up against Wisconsin pretty well. Not enough to beat them, so I think VCU ceiling is around a 32. But I could see BYU beating Wisconsin, so I could see BYU going to the Sweet 16. And I think it's a tough matchup, and I also want to throw one more thing out there is I wish George Mason also made the tournament. They deserved it. They didn't get in. Like, I think they could have been a first four team instead of like a Texas, or not Texas, like a Xavier. I also don't think North Carolina should be in this tournament. They only have one quad one win. I think that was bogus. So I would throw in George Mason over North Carolina, but there's a lot of controversy with North Carolina. But that's what I had to say about VCU in the A10 and the rest of that little segment.
Yeah, I feel like this game is kind of a toss-up for me. BYU is another high-scoring team. They shoot the ball really well. Richie Saunders, knockdown shooter from the outside. But I feel like if VCU wants to win this game, they're going to have to slow it down as well and play good, very good defensively, because this BYU team can score. They're not that great defensively, so it's probably going to be a shootout, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys. I think VCU, I really like them in this matchup, and like I said, I'll be rooting for them, but I don't think they're going to get it done. I think BYU's too good. I know they got crushed by Houston in the Big 12 tournament, but they beat Iowa State, and Iowa State's a 3 seed. So
exactly.
And that's actually the team that should be flipped with in Arizona or Wisconsin or something like.
Yeah.
Iowa State, I don't think should be whatever. That's a little tangent right there, but let's get into it though. Let's get into their region, the East region, the final one that we haven't talked about yet. Pretty sure, right? We've talked about all of them.
I'm
besides
pretty sure.
Or the South region, my bad. South region with Auburn as the 1 seed. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about any potential matchups, any upsets in this one? I touched on Michigan State a little bit, but that was really it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get right into it. I think the game that raises the most, I don't know, like controversy or split right down the middle in a way is like that Louisville Creighton game. Every single time I've picked that game, I've had trouble of who to pick. I think that one might be one of the most exciting games on day one. And I think I'm leaning a little bit more.
The first game.
Yeah.
The first game of the tournament. That's
going
to start off with a bang.
And I think that is a perfect game to lead off with because that's the one where I literally see a 50-50 split between these two teams. I think that's a game that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. I think this is a really tough region, and I wish I don't know. I mean, there's some heavyweights, obviously, with Auburn and my Michigan State Spartans, and I really think that if there could be the Elite Eight matchup with Auburn and Michigan State, that could be a really, really good game. And I think, especially with Iowa State, which I'm not sleeping on, because Iowa State's also a good ball team, and Texas A&M and Michigan, with all those teams, I think the 1 through 5s in this region, I think the 1 through 5, that's who's going to be representing the whole region.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously a little biased. I think Michigan State can get it done. I think that loss against Wisconsin is going to leave a big chip on their shoulder. Especially, I saw this video. You just got to buy into Izzo's system. It's Izzo March for a reason. And if you just buy into his system, they can get it done. But if they don't buy into his system, I don't know what they're going to do against the second round and a potential Shaka Smart matchup, because Marquette's a very, very solid team. And they've contended with the Big East, especially St. John's, all year. So that's going to be a matchup to watch out for. And there's I think Ole Miss is a low-key sleeper in a way. I think they might get knocked out in the first weekend, though. If I had to pick a team to get knocked out in the first weekend, I think it'd be Ole Miss.
Just to touch on that a little bit, I feel like nobody in this region touches Auburn at all. Talking about Ole Miss, I feel like this San Diego State UNC game tonight is going to be an amazing game. A lot of people talking about UNC shouldn't have been in the tournament. I agree with that, but they're also hearing that noise too, and I feel like they're going to come in the tournament motivated with a chip on their shoulder. And
especially a team that's been there too.
They've been there. They've been to the national championship, and if they get past Ole Miss and San Diego State, they're going to match up against a depleted Iowa State team without Keyshawn Gilbert, and that's a game they could win as well. Their bigs and Jalen Withers and Van Allen Lubin match up pretty well with Iowa State's bigs, and I feel like RJ Davis doesn't want to go home. I feel like this tournament we could see him go for 30 almost every single game, and they could get hot and go on a run.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there, CJ. I mean, I feel like I'm filling out this bracket right now in front of me, and I have a Bryant versus SDSU/UNC Sweet 16, and I kind of love it, honestly.
I'm calling an overtime game tonight.
Ooh.
In that game?
In that game, it's going to be an overtime.
Okay.
I like that a lot.
Okay. I think this episode will be up after the game, but
we'll see.
Regardless, I guess we'll see. I guess you'll see when you're listening to this. This region's really interesting because this is probably I don't even know. It's just such a weird region. It's like I feel like some of the seedings were wrong. I feel like there's some hurt teams in here, obviously, but like you said, I feel like Auburn is just the obvious pick to get through this region.
Just to go back a little bit, I know Michigan's your team. I'm not saying a lot of people are saying that they're going to get upset, but I don't think that's true. But I think this is going to be a really good game. UC San Diego is a very good team. I watched them play the other day against UC Irvine in the championship. They're a good, high-scoring team. They can score the ball, and they can play really good defense. Their best player, I don't know how to say his name, Iwa Tate Jones, I believe it is. 6'6", 200 pounds. He's a very good scorer, and obviously Michigan has 2 7-footers. I feel like that's where they're going to be behind a little bit. They can't match up really well with the size, but I feel like it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I was going to mention that when I got to Michigan. I just feel like the size in that matchup particularly, I feel like obviously if UC San Diego shoots the lights out, we can't really do much about that. But Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden down there, I think they'll get enough stops defensively for us to keep us up by that 6 to 8 point margin throughout most of the game. I think will be a close game because this team is 30-4 and they're just high-powered team. But I think Michigan does pull it out. Going to the matchup right below that in the bracket, Texas A&M Yale. This is one that I'm really interested in because once again, everybody's on the Yale train. It's one of those, popular picks like a High Point this year as well, and like McNeese last year and Samford and all those teams. But Yale's that team this year against Texas A&M. And I feel like it's a little bit more of a watered-down situation as UNC, but with Wade Taylor. I feel like Wade Taylor isn't going to let this stuff slide. I feel like he's going to want to keep going. And I honestly think that second-round matchup with Michigan is going to be a big sign for Wade Taylor in his career. I feel like that's going to be a game where it's like, obviously, you got Auburn looming in the next one. So he's going to take that game as, hey, this is the game where people are going to be looking at me. I think that's going to be a tough one. I honestly think that A&M gives Michigan a run for their money and probably knocks them out. If Michigan didn't win the Big Ten, probably have a little bit more confidence them in the tournament. But it's hard to win this many games in a row.
It is.
So I feel like the wheels are going to fall off at some point, and potentially I feel like that's why people are on UC San Diego. But I think Michigan wins one game. And then I think they get knocked out, honestly, against A&M in the next one. I hope it doesn't happen, but I think that's the way my mind is trending right now. And this could change in the next 20 minutes, but just the way I'm looking at it right now, I feel like Wade Taylor is not going to let anything slide this March. And I feel like even that game against Auburn, SEC matchup, anything can happen there in a conference game. You never know. Wade Taylor and this A&M team could get hot.
Yeah, riding off what you just said with especially winning a conference tournament, and if you have a little win streak before that too, it's really hard to keep winning. And that's why I'm also going to say for my Michigan State Spartans, they got the loss out of the way. And I hope that they can use that as a chip on their shoulder, because I know they won the regular season. I know you always want to win that conference tournament. There's always some extra mojo about a conference tournament, especially with the Big Ten. And I think with a loss they're coming off a loss, especially against a 15 seed. They're not going to take any team lightly. And I really would like to see Barry Evans play decent and the rest of the team play horrible, because Barry Evans will forever be our guy.
Shout out to Barry, man. Shout out to Barry. I love seeing him I love seeing the smaller schools get into March. And I wanted to ask you about this, CJ. Is like, when you're one of those smaller schools, like, do you guys have talks like in the locker room, like, if we get to March, like we're like dead if we get there, or is it kind of like you have that confidence of you can go in and beat any team on any day?
Honestly, I feel I never came across that experience, but I feel like if as a smaller team, you really have nothing to lose out there.
Yeah.
You're happy to be there. It's a great experience, but this other team, whatever the higher seed is, they have a lot of pressure on their back, because obviously they don't want to be a Purdue losing to a 16 seed. So
Right.
these smaller teams, they're just going out there and they're playing. They're happy to be out there, but at the end of the day, if they lose, they lose. They nothing was expected of them. So that's why they go out there and they play like they have nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah. And then you find guys like diamonds in the rough, like Melvin Council, who at Wagner last year in the first 4 game, balled out in the first 4 game, went on to go play UNC, played another great game, and then transfers to St. Bonaventure, potentially going to some bigger things next year as well, pro or wherever he decides to transfer to. But you get guys like that too that you see that evolve too, and it's pretty cool to see in March, and you can really only find it in March Madness.
Yeah, I mean that's what helps out some of these smaller guys, really get the bigger schools' eyes on them, or even just bigger in general. Like say like St. Peter's with Daryl Banks and Doug Eater, both going away to not huge schools but just bigger schools, just to get another couple of years out there for playing for a better conference, playing for a better team, and that's what I love. Yeah. I love seeing guys being able to go get their name out there. If they're like a nice little 15, 16 seed, ball out, and then just go and not a huge school, but just get bigger and grow your career personally.
Along with what you're saying on that, and these guys being able to perform and go to the higher level with the transfer portal, a lot of these guys, this will be the last basketball game that they ever play in their life. Yep. Like you said, Jack Golke and guys like that. There's not a lot of hope for them playing in the NBA or anything like that. A lot of these guys are just going back to normal jobs after this. So this could be a huge experience for them. It's a chance for them to make their names. Maybe some guys who aren't even on draft boards can make a name for themselves and stick out a little bit and play their heart out.
Yeah, very true. I do love it for the small schools because it just gives these. I mean, the fan bases. I mean, like think about us. Like we're going to the NIT game tonight, and we're hype about that.
We are pumped.
Hype about the first round of the NIT. I'm really excited. Postseason basketball is postseason basketball.
Exactly.
But then you get it like these small schools, like Akron. Like Akron's a very successful basketball program, but the MAC is very tough, and they don't send the same school every year. Mm-hmm. So Akron finally getting their chance, and we're playing a MAC school tonight, Kent State.
Yep.
Who I think, oh no, they lost to Miami, Ohio. But anyway, but Akron's a great example of this. It's like they can get in, and that program can be forever changed with 2 wins. I mean, 3 wins. I mean, look at Loyola Chicago. They were able to change conferences and now be at the top of the A10 and being a dominant team in a big market too, with a big passionate fan base. I mean, Loyola Chicago did one of the best jobs of evolving their brand from one, I don't want to say from one run because it takes steps to get there, but that run definitely magnified it and allowed them to move from the MVC or the OVC, wherever they were, to the A10 and eventually become, where they are today. So it just gives an opportunity for that, and you got to love March because of that.
Yeah, I just want to backtrack about 5 minutes ago because I had a little point to
my bad.
Put in. No, you're fine. But when you were talking about Wade Taylor and how he could go on a run like R.J. Davis or something, he's going to shoot the ball, and that could be a good thing for Texas A&M, but that could also be a bad thing for Texas A&M. Honestly, watching him play, he shoots pretty questionable shots. A lot of them go in, but a lot of those shots don't go in as well. So I feel like once they get to this matchup against Michigan, Michigan could win this matchup, and then I'm excited to see a Trey Donaldson Michigan team versus his old school in Auburn. I feel like that's going to be a great matchup. Janai Broom, from my knowledge, hasn't played many 7-footers this year, any guys who can really guard him in the post. So I feel like that's going to be a great matchup down low in the guards as well with Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gale, along with the Auburn guards.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we're saying some big names, which is awesome. And I was just thinking of like a little thing for the future, not necessarily March Madness related. I think this might be a draft for the NBA where you're actually going to like to watch it this year because there's going to be some huge names.
Right.
Which we didn't see last year. We saw
Right.
a really disgruntled, weird draft that nobody even knew who Anthony Starr really was. Or
Yeah, Alex Sarr.
Sorry.
See?
Yeah.
See?
I mean, sorry. I mean, I don't even know who the number one pick. I'm not.
Zachary Reese.
Yeah, I can't even remember his name. And I think this is a different kind of mojo where all these guys, they're playing for their stocks. And they're playing, obviously, for their teams, but they're playing for themselves at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a different kind of feeling.
I'm definitely with you. I feel like for guys like, Cooper Flagg, it's not going to matter much. He's going to be going number one. But right, I think a guy like Dalton Knecht, he would have definitely benefited more from playing in this draft. And I think a guy like Reed Sheppard did because you could see last year, obviously in the tournament, they didn't get what they wanted. But throughout the whole season, that was kind of one of those guys that got the recognition. Dalton Knecht got the recognition, but then for whatever reason, his draft stock kind of fell around draft time. I think you're not going to see that this year. The guys will stay up. Not as many international prospects this year. So I think you'll see guys like a Wade Taylor, like an RJ Davis, guys like that who, if they get a few wins under their belt, that'll be enough to jump them up about 5 or 6 picks in this year's NBA draft.
Especially
That's
with
a great point.
Mark Sears, too.
Right. Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, he's already probably, I don't even know where he's projected, but teams don't usually like taking risks on undersized guards.
Yeah.
I feel like he's the exception maybe to that. I would love to see him go on a Kemba Walker type of run. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I really like how, like you said, the NBA is going to be a lot more, I guess, involved in this tournament more than the last few years.
Just a quick question for you guys. Who do you think from one of these smaller schools will have a little run in them or will go off in these next couple of games?
I think Max Scholga. I think we were talking about VCU a little bit earlier. I think him and what's the center's name? Bamisil. Yeah, I think both of them are going to get their draft stocks raised a little bit. And I think playing a team like BYU, even if they don't win that game, if Scholga can have a good game, he can show people what A-10 basketball is about. And I think that could also just help the A-10 in general. So I think Scholga, I guess, to answer your question, if that's a small enough.
No,
People
I agree. Just
Ukrainian, what do they call him?
I don't know.
He's from Ukraine.
Okay.
Ukrainian missile or something. I don't even. No, not that. Sorry.
But I was gonna say Max Scholga, but that slot got taken from me. So yeah, I guess the missile got taken from me. But if I had to pick one, I gotta go back to my roots. I gotta go to my guy, Quadir Copeland. Absolutely great ball player. Obviously, he played for Syracuse. I've watched a lot of him. Went to McNeese, went to a smaller school, got in the dance, and I think this is his time to shine, especially in a March Madness run where he can go against a team he faced prior in Clemson in the ACC. I think that Quadir Copeland could be a guy to look out for to get his name out there again.
What do you think, Siege?
I'm a little tied between two players. Donovan Dent from New Mexico. A lot of people don't watch New Mexico games, and them being in the West Coast and the games later on at night. He's one of the best point guards in the country. A lot of people haven't seen him play, and I think it's going to be a great matchup between him and Cam Jones of Marquette. It's really a way for him to get his name out there, and if they go on a little run, it'll be good for him. And then the other person that I was tied with is Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma. He's going to be on a big stage against UConn, projected first-round draft pick. He's a great player. Honestly, a lot of things that I've been seeing over the last few days, just get Jeremiah Fears the ball and get out of the way. He's going to do his thing. And if they take down UConn, he could go on a little run, go for 30 points each game by himself.
Oklahoma potentially one of the worst draws of all time. I mean, they had to face the two-time defending national champions. And then if they win that game against a tough team, which it's going to be a tough game, they're going to have to play Florida.
Yeah, I know.
And then if they win that, they're going to have to play who? Maryland?
Maryland or Memphis.
Or Mizzou or
Yeah.
Memphis. Like that's a tough tough draw for Oklahoma, and especially in already. I mean, they were already beat up from SEC play, and then they got to jump right into this too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy.
But sometimes that's what helps those kind of teams
Right.
succeed is
Right.
having that horrible regular season of just gauntlet after gauntlet, and then all of a sudden you get into March.
It feels a
and
little bit
then-
easier, yeah.
Yeah, I mean specifically if we're talking about like a team, for example, we'll go to Texas A&M. I mean, if they had not horrible. They said, like I said, a gauntlet to go through in the regular season, and then if they can go up and face Michigan, they're already used to playing that kind of basketball, and they can keep going. And all of a sudden now they're potential against Auburn, which they've seen before. So,
Right.
I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of room for these teams who went through the ACC or the Big Ten. I know we were talking a little bad about the Big Ten, but same kind of feeling. Mainly the SEC, though. Those SEC teams are going to be... That's why there's 14 of them in there. Because I think that everybody believes in 14 of them can make a run, no matter what seed they are.
Yeah. So before we go, one takeaway from the tournament that you guys think, and then your national champion.
All right.
Just one takeaway that I have. I feel like this Gonzaga team will give Houston a run for their money if they make it to the second round. A lot of people forget they were ranked in the top 5 at the beginning of the season when they were playing in those Thanksgiving tournaments. They're a very good team with Ryan Nembhard at point guard. They have a lot of size and they have a lot of experienced players as well. They played 2 close games with St. Mary's. Obviously, losing both of those games with St. Mary's is a good team, like we've talked about earlier. But Gonzaga, their streak, I don't know how many years it is, 9 years, I think, that they've made it consecutive to the Sweet 16, and I don't think that ends this year.
I like that. I would say, and I know CJ's not going to like this, I would watch out for Arkansas because Coach Cal, come March, he hasn't had a lot of success. He's at a brand new school. He's going to want those boys to play extra hard against a Kansas team, which, like CJ was saying, you don't know what version of them you're going to get. So, depending on the version that we get, I mean, if Arkansas can move on, obviously they'll have to play a St. John's team. But that, I mean, it's going to be...
It'd be a great coaching matchup.
Yeah. Coach Cal against Rick Pitino. I mean, there's a lot of potential for Arkansas to put their name out there for next year already. And then the national champion, Michigan State Spartans.
I don't know if I can choose a national championship. All I have to say is it's going to be an SEC team, whether that's Florida, Tennessee, or Auburn. Like you said, it's been a gauntlet all season for all of these teams. They beat up against a lot of these teams too, and just playing these non-SEC teams, I feel like it's going to be easier for them. Like you said, the SEC is a very physical conference, and I don't know if a lot of these teams can match the physicality that these players have. So, like I said, one of those 3 teams between Florida, Auburn, or Tennessee.
I love both those picks. My takeaway, real quick, is that I think this is the year of the favorite. I don't think there's going to be many upset picks. I feel like the last 2 years we've had a ton. Mm-hmm. We've had a ton of runs. It's in 3 years. A ton of Cinderella runs and stuff like that. I think we're going to see a lot of the better teams this year. I think we're going to see a lot of closer games, but I don't think we're going to see those lower seeds pull off the Furman like upsets that we've seen in the last few years. Like I think the top teams are going to come out and play smart this year, and I think they're gonna make a run. And I think my national champion, I hate him, but I'm gonna go with Duke. I don't really think it's hard to pick against them. I'm banking on Cooper Flagg being healthy. I'm banking on their experience with Tyrese Proctor, and I'm banking on guys like Con Knipple just doing what he's been doing all year and being the best number 2 option probably in the country. So I got Duke, John Shire. I really like how that team's been playing all year. They've been really. If Cooper Flagg didn't get hurt, this would be 100% for me. But that injury's kind of scaring me a little bit. But I think I got Duke.
I can also see. I don't know if you guys remember this, or maybe I'm just making something up. Because I feel like I remember it. I feel like there was a year where there was the Final Four was at 3, or maybe all 4 of the teams were ACC teams. I could see that as like a SEC thing for this year.
I agree.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's 4 SEC teams in the Final Four.
Yeah, just going off what you said, I'm just looking at the bracket right now. Could definitely see Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama in the Final Four.
Yeah, completely.
It's going to be a very good tournament. It's going to be very cool to see who emerges, who kind of falls back. Because, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but the next few days kind of carry the storylines for the offseason and in recruiting in the portal. And a lot of changes are going to be coming just a week from today.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be even more with the next round after that, and then after that, and then we get the offseason. But I think it's going to be a good tournament to start. Thursday, Friday, some of the best days of the year. Enjoy the first 4 before that.
Go Bonnies.
Go Bonnies.
Big NIT game today against Kent State, and then if they can get that done, Stanford, CSUN, you're next.
Go Bonnies.
Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. Thank you to CJ
Thank
for
you.
coming on again. We'll have you on again for sure. If you guys haven't, go check out our basketball game preview for the A10 tournament on the Bonaventure _sports _insider
Here you go.
Instagram, with an underscore between every word. And then our Instagram
At Out of Bounds Podcast with a dot between every single word.
to see our personal content. And then we're going to have some more game previews coming up on that BSI account, so stay tuned for that. Let us know what you guys want to see. Let us know who your national champion's going to be.
Shoot in the comments below.
Shoot in the comments below. Thank you guys, and have a day.
Have a day.